Okay, so let's talk tablets. Finding a good one that's actually good without spending a fortune. It's tough. But then something like this Teclast P50 comes along, and honestly, it's got me curious.
Yeah, you see a price tag around $140 and you kind of wonder if it's all smoke and mirrors, right?
Right. This Teclast P50, though, it seems like they're promising a lot for that price. So we're taking a deep dive today. We're looking at this review from tablereviewhub.com to see if this thing lives up to the hype. Where should we even start with this thing?
Well, this P50, it really seems to be trying to pack in the features. Makes you wonder, like, did they find some loophole in, like, physics or economics or something?
I know, right? And the review, they actually talk about the build quality. And it sounds like we're not talking about some flimsy, plastic thing here. Metal construction, they even use the words premium feel.
Yeah.
Is that typical for Teclast? Because I don't usually associate budget tablets with, premium anything.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not going to be like a unibody aluminum design or anything like you'd see on, like, those crazy expensive tablets. But even incorporating metal accents at this price point, that's kind of Teclast saying, hey, we care about the details, It's a good sign that they're not just like throwing something together and calling it a day.
It's like they're trying to impress us. And speaking of impressive, can we talk about the RAM? 14 GB of RAM. I mean, am I reading that right? For under $140. That just seems wild.
Yeah, so about that RAM, they're playing a little game, a little bit of marketing magic. You get 6 GB of actual physical RAM, which, okay, even that's pretty decent for this price range, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But then they add on another 8 GB of what they call virtual RAM. So basically, the tablet, it borrows some of its storage space to give the RAM a boost when it needs it.
Okay, so it's not really 14 GB of RAM in the, traditional sense. Gotcha. But does it actually help with performance?
Well, that's the thing. The review says it actually does make a difference. It's not going to be exactly the same as having, like, a full 14 GB of physical RAM, of course. But apparently it handles multitasking way better than you'd expect for a tablet at this price. Keep those apps open, switch between them. It should be relatively smooth sailing.
Okay, so maybe not a RAM monster, but definitely punching above its weight class. It's a RAM situation, somewhat demystified. What about the display? I feel like that's always a big one for me.
Yeah, totally.
And it sounds like they went with a bit of a trade-off here. So they've got those vibrant colors, which is always a plus. But the resolution, not quite full HD, just HD.
Yeah.
So for people who are wondering if that's a deal breaker, what are we thinking? What's the impact on the everyday user experience going to be?
Honestly, it really depends what you're planning on doing with it. Like, if you're primarily using your tablet for, let's say, streaming your favorite shows, scrolling through social media, browsing the web, even some casual gaming, that kind of thing, the HD resolution, it's probably going to be perfectly fine. The colors will still pop. And honestly, you might not even notice a huge difference.
So that way, is that right?
Well, yeah, if you're planning on using this tablet for, more demanding stuff, if it's your mobile, creative, studio photo editing, graphic design, anything that really needs those super crisp details, that's where you might start to wish you had that full HD.
So casual users, probably good to go. Aspiring digital artists, maybe not so much. Classic case of you get what you pay for, although maybe they splurged in other areas. Speaking of which, let's talk battery life, because let's be real, no one wants a tablet that's going to die on them in the middle of a movie marathon. How's the battery life looking on this thing?
Jules, get this. 8,000 mAh battery. Not bad, right?
8,000 mil. That's pretty hefty.
In the review, they're saying you can expect a solid 8 to 10 hours of, like, mixed use on that.
8 to 10 hours. That's a whole workday, a long flight, a serious Netflix binge. Sounds like it can handle those on-the-go lifestyles.
Bleh.
But, okay, enough about watching stuff. Let's talk about what's running the show here, the software. I gotta say, I was pretty surprised to see they're actually putting Android 14 on this thing.
Right, out of the box.
The latest Android. That's a big deal for a budget tablet.
It really is. It means you're getting that modern interface, the newest, the best security features.
Yeah.
You're not stuck with some, like, outdated software. Oh, and another thing they mentioned in the review, it's a small detail, but it makes a big difference.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Widevine L1 certification. You familiar with that?
I saw that in the review. To be totally honest, I wasn't 100% sure what it meant.
Okay, so imagine this. You're all settled in for a movie night. You go to start streaming, and the quality is, like, stuck in standard definition. Everything's blurry. You can practically count the pixels.
Ugh, the worst.
The worst. And that's where Widevine L1 certification comes in. Basically, it means you can stream in HD, glorious HD, from all the big players, Netflix, Disney, you name it. No limitations, no fuzzy details.
Okay, so even though the display itself isn't full HD, at least you won't be stuck watching everything in a blurry haze. They were thinking about as streamers. What about those moments you want to capture yourself? How's the camera situation on this thing? and for that matter, the audio. Because, like, what good are all those movies and shows if the speakers sound like garbage?
All right, so this is where we might need to, like, adjust our expectations a little bit.
Oh, here it comes. So not exactly winning any photography awards then.
Yeah, it seems like the camera and the audio, these were probably the areas where Teclast was like, okay, got to cut some corners here to hit that price point. You've got a 13 megapixel rear camera and a 5 megapixel front camera, which, I mean, hey, it's there, it's functional.
Functional.
But don't expect anything spectacular. The review said photos are decent if you've got good lighting, but like low light performance, not so much. And video calls will be fine for like Zoom meetings, catching up with family, that sort of thing, but it's not going to blow you away.
Yeah, I get it. And the speakers. Can I finally ditch my headphones or am I stuck with them?
Well, the review was pretty direct about this one. They used the words functional but lacking depth. Oh, and they even said tinny.
Ouch. Tinny is not a word you want to hear describing your audio. Okay, so headphones it is, but hey, at least it's not sacrificing performance or battery life for this stuff.
Right. Exactly. And, you know, we got to keep in mind who this tablet is really for, right? If you're someone who mainly uses their tablet for things like browsing, streaming, maybe a little light productivity here and there, the camera and the audio, those might not be the biggest deal breakers.
Especially not at this price.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so before we give our final verdict, I wanted to touch on something else from the review that I thought was really interesting. The user comments. Because it seems like people who actually own this thing are genuinely impressed.
Yeah, it's like finding that, you know, hole-in-the-wall restaurant. Amazing food, super affordable, but maybe they haven't quite figured out the whole, like, ambiance thing yet.
Yeah. But speaking of things that haven't quite been figured out, the review did mention there were some occasional app issues with the P50. And I gotta be honest, that kind of thing would usually have me running for the hills. Like, I don't need that kind of stress in my life.
Yeah, I hear you. Especially with tech, you just want things to work, right? Seamless experience, no glitches, no drama.
Exactly.
But the interesting thing is, the review also highlighted that, like, even though some people ran into those little app hiccups, they were really impressed with Teclast's customer support. Apparently, they're, like, super responsive, actually helpful, and, like, actually solved the problems.
Okay, now that's impressive, because I've definitely experienced my fair share of, like, tech support nightmares. Remember that time I spent like 45 minutes on hold, only to be told to like turn it off and on again?
Class.
I swear it's like they have a script or something. But it sounds like, at least with Teclast, they're trying to do things a little differently.
Yeah, it seems like they get it. A good product, it's not just about the product itself. It's about having that support system in place if, you know, things go sideways. Which, let's be real, with tech, it's bound to happen at some point.
Totally. It's like that saying, it's not about how hard you fall. It's about how quickly you get back up. Or, in this case, how quickly Teclast helps you get back up and running. But it does raise an interesting question for, like, our listeners.
Yep.
When you're considering a new tech purchase, how much weight do you give to customer support? Is it a deal breaker? Is it just like a nice bonus? Or somewhere in between? We're actually curious to hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah.
But I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the world of the Teclast P50. We've looked at the good, the not so good, and everything in between. And hopefully we've given you a better sense of whether this budget-friendly tablet is the right fit for your, tech life.
Remember, folks, informed decisions are the best decisions. And with that, we'll catch you in the next deep dive.